Crowds back at Wembley. It already feels as though football's come home. In comes Sterling!
This summer, football almost came home. And we were introduced to a new generation of England stars. But Panorama has been investigating a darker side of the beautiful game.
I'd be on the phone on the way to training, crying, saying how much I didn't want to go.
The football academies where superstars are made, but dreams are also broken.
He ripped my heart out. His mental health went downhill.
And the agents cashing in on talented youngsters in breach of football rules.
The approaches and the underhanded tactics, that is the dark side of the game.
Tonight we ask, are football's young hopefuls paying too high a price for glory on the pitch?
It's a relief if your son's successful.
And if not?
If not, it could be a disaster.
My name's Rory Carson. Before I became a journalist, I was a professional footballer. I've been investigating what can happen to kids who, like me, dreamed of a career in the sport they love.
Playing football was like the way out. It was like the way that we could express ourselves.
When I was about 12, that's when I said to myself, you know, I'm going to knuckle down and focus and, you know, really try to become a professional footballer.
Literally everything was football, football, football. I love everything.
My first stop is the Aylesbury estate in southeast London.
Play, go forward, go forward. Great block.
Cease Holmes Lewis is a youth worker who grew up here.
Play, play, play.
Tell me about all the footballers that have come from around here.
Jadon Sancho was around here a lot. He used to play in cages such as this. Reece Nelson grew up on the Aylesbury estate. So there's a lot of players, you know, at the top level that used to come here and grace these pitches. It was just that kind of arena kind of attitude. It was here, you felt like superstars because everyone wanted to play professional football. That was everybody's goal, and that was our way out.
With England stars like Jadon Sancho as role models, these young players dream of making it out of the cage and into the big time.
We've had a lot of clubs come round here, you know, that are not even from London.
Really?
You know, your Manchester Cities and come round to scout players around here. So it's obviously a hotbed of talent. All right, cool, we're nearly there. So we're just gonna play a game.
The clubs are looking for young players to recruit to their football academies. Training schools set up to develop young talent. Every year, clubs in the Premier League and the other top divisions sign up hundreds of boys and girls aged between 9 and 16. They train and play matches while still at school.
All those months, years playing in the cage, finally got rewarded.
At 16, the most talented will be offered a paid scholarship, combining education and full-time football training.
I thought I'm on the right tracks now.
I've made it. Nothing's going to stop me now.
It's every little boy's dream.
The academy system has been incredibly successful at producing a new generation of players in the men's game. Superstars like Rashford, Sancho, Foden, Grealish and Saka. This summer they took England to their first tournament final for 55 years. Also in the England squad is 21-year-old Reece James. He came through Chelsea's academy, starting out at just 6 years old. His dad Nigel has been with him every step of the way.
We're fortunate that it's worked for Reece. From the age 13 to 15, he had some tough times, but that's what's made him the person he is today.
Was it hard for you as a parent going through that journey?
Yeah, it's a journey I wouldn't like to go through it again.
The vast majority of youngsters who join Premier League academies will never play a professional match. Parents like Nigel are on a constant knife edge. Is it not exhausting as a parent?
It's exhausting, and it's a relief if your son's successful.
And if not?
If not, it could be a disaster.
9 years ago, the Premier League and the Football Association introduced the Elite Player Performance Plan, or EPPP. Academies were expanded, money was ploughed in, and ambitious targets were set.
The first is for the England team to at least reach the semi-finals of the Euro Championships in 2020, and the second is for us to win the World Cup in 2022.
What we've seen as a result of EPPP is the ability of clubs to recruit more young players at a relatively low cost to the club. But it also means that the number of kids who are going to fail is going to increase as well. The factory farm mentality of the academies has meant that there's an awful lot of pressure upon everybody involved. The scouts, the coaches, but also these young players. And it's that aspect which is the most brutal business part of the academies.
They said, you know, unfortunately, we're not going to give you a professional contract. You almost feel like you're nobody at the time.
Jazz, the footballer, when that got taken away from me, I felt a little part of me got lost as well.
What it's like to be that close to the dream is difficult. You're actually fingertips away.
I know how that feels. I almost made it too. As a kid, I joined Bradford City's academy, but at 19, without ever starting a first-team game, I received the news I'd been dreading. I was deemed not good enough and released. I dropped out of the professional game forever. There are growing concerns that the pressure to make it is affecting young players' mental health. The suspected suicide of 18-year-old Jeremy Whiston, who was released by Manchester City's academy, prompted top stars to take to social media. An inquest into Jeremy's death is yet to be held. Do you think enough is done to help those that don't make it?
Not really. More academies, scouting players at a younger age group. When you've been in the system all your life and you get to 18, 19, and then you drop, the moment you're gone, you've walked out that door, you're on your own. If we don't have the support for these players in place, have something in place for them, we'll all have a crisis.
Eva Colasso-Thomas lives in Norbury in South London. Her son Cassian joined Fulham FC's academy when he was 8. 10 years later, he was released and it hit him hard.
It ripped my heart out because I felt he cut himself out from all his friends. He didn't want to talk to anyone.
Eva offers to introduce me to Cassian and we arrange another meeting. Hello, Eva.
Hello, Rory.
Is Cassian coming along?
Oh, I'm sorry. He's not up for it. He's not 100%, so he didn't want to come.
He's not feeling great?
No.
How good was he?
I don't want to blow his trumpet, but he was quite good.
And the coaches were very positive in those early years.
I remember they kept saying, no, you can buy your mum a house, you can do this, you'll do really well. And he had that drummed into him.
You're going to make it?
You're going to make it, yeah.
Can you tell me about the moment when you found out that Cassian was released?
It was a weekend. He went off to play a game and he got a little bit upset when he came back and he said, they didn't play me. So I called his dad and then his dad said they've just called him and they said they've released him. I just remember he didn't say anything, he was just quiet. His mental health went downhill. I think it was quite brutal.
After he was released, Fulham kept in touch with Cassian. They put him forward for a number of opportunities outside of the club. But his mum says he wasn't ready to go back to football. Now, 4 years on, he's just been offered a coaching role at Fulham. There will be people who will watch this at home and they will say that it's inevitable. Not everyone can make it.
After being in the club for nearly 10 years and just to release him, You're hero to zero in no time. I just want him to be back to how he was. I just want him to be independent and do what he enjoys. I don't even know what that is anymore.
Meeting Eva brought back a lot of memories for me. A lot of things that I had not thought about in a long, long time. I remember feeling so embarrassed when I explained to everyone that I'd been released. I was no longer a footballer. Ultimately, I was able to move on with my life, but for Eva's son, it hasn't been so easy. And what she's saying raises serious questions about a system which brings in so many kids and spits them out at the other end. Five years ago, Dr. David Blakelock spoke to more than 90 academy footballers as part of a mental health study.
A sizable proportion did experience what we'd call clinical levels of distress. In the first month after release, it was kind of between 35 and 55% of players experienced those difficulties. Symptoms linked with depression, anxiety, loss of confidence. That can lead to really, negative consequences for the individual themselves.
The Premier League says player care is an integral part of EPPP, and that players receive mental and emotional well-being education as well as practical life skills to help support them beyond the academy environment. It says it runs pre-season preparation camps to support released players on career and pathway possibilities in and out of football. Youth academies are also big money earners for Premier League clubs. Last summer they earned at least £250 million by selling their academy graduates.
The commoditisation of young footballers means that they are now being viewed by some clubs as potential profit centres and not part of the development of a young person. If you have a constant stream of players who are quite promising and you're able to sell them, and that can help clubs to further boost their revenue streams.
Money can also change hands if young players move from one academy to another. It's attracted the attention of football agents despite strict FA rules to keep them out.
As far as recruiting young people are concerned, you can't have an agent if you're below the age of 16, but if I'm an agent who spots the next Jack Grealish, that young man is worth millions of pounds to me in terms of the commission I can make on a transfer.
It's an opportunity some agents can't resist.
I've heard of agents approaching children from as young as 10. The underhanded tactics to get players on your books, that is the dark side of the game.
Agents go to any player that they can just get any money off. You could be an absolute baller and an agent want to get you signed because he knows that in 10 years' time, your value will appreciate astronomically.
I've been trying to find out more about how football agents operate. It can be a murky world where the tapping up of young players is commonplace, and few in the game are prepared to talk openly. But I've had a breakthrough. Someone extremely close to an elite footballer, a superstar worth millions, has agreed to speak to me. This player has been approached countless times from a very young age, but the family are worried that by speaking out, it might jeopardise the player's career, despite the fact he's already made it. He's agreed to meet me on condition we disguise his identity.
The first approach from an agent wasn't to the family. It was direct to the kid on social media.
How did you feel when that happened?
I was really, really angry. The kid was 12. It's grooming. They groom the family.
Groom?
Yeah. They'll go through a process of building a relationship. They'll work their way in to be trusted as caring, that they're working for the kid and the family's best interests.
As an insider with years of experience of the professional game, he believes it's not just agents who are involved.
The clubs are complicit. Every kid in that academy system is a potential profit. It'll be clubs showing an interest or talking about kids that they want to try and recruit. And someone, somewhere along the lines, speaking to an agent. It makes a game which should be fun into something really dirty.
I find that quite shocking. I've been told about how agents will approach kids who are underage, but that family member just described how the agents and the clubs are implicated in this system which views kids and their dreams as a way to make money.
As my investigation continues, more football insiders open up about how agents prey on young players.
I have finally got a scout at a Premier League club who's going to tell me all about it.
He doesn't want to speak openly because he's worried it'll harm his career, so we've agreed to hide his identity.
Hello.
He says agents often go after struggling families.
They try to single mom family because it's easy. The easy approach is, oh, hello auntie, hello uncle, how can we help you? We noticed that you're working 2-3 jobs. You know what, we'll look after your son, we'll look after him like he's our brother. All starts from a very, very young age.
Who are some of the worst agencies?
I would say Colossal. Their aim and their goal is simple, to sign as many players as they can.
Colossal Sports Management is one of the best known agencies in football. It's owned by super agent Eddie Ward. He made his name nurturing the career of one of England's biggest stars.
Sterling!
With 79 goals so far in the Premier League for Manchester City, Raheem Sterling helped the club to 3 league titles, earning him a reported £15 million a year. Eddie Ward's been around football for years. Before he set up Colossal, he'd been on the lookout for young talent, and I found someone who's prepared to speak openly about it.
He was a footballing prodigy, like a future superstar, wanted by all the big clubs in England. But what no one knows is that Eddie acted as his agent from a very, very young age. Fode, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm good.
How you
Thanks
been?
for making the time.
When I first started, I was a striker.
Really?
Fode Nabe was born in Sierra Leone and moved to England with his mum when he was 6.
Say that.
And he went on to become part of the England youth setup from a young age.
Let me try this one.
A star at Birmingham City's academy, he had high hopes for the future.
You think I gotta drop that? My time at Birmingham was really, really good. It was fun. I didn't want to go home, and when I went home, I couldn't wait to go back into training. That's like how much I enjoyed football at the time. My long-term goal was being the youngest ever player to make a debut for the first team.
It wasn't long before Eddie Ward got in touch.
What age were you then?
12, not older than 12 years old. He came across like friendly but serious, kind of like jokey. He liked nice things. Every time I saw him, it was a different watch. And he'd joke about, when you make da-da-da-da-da, I'll get you one of these. But looking back at it now, and these alarm bells. If it was outside of football, would you speak to a 12-year-old on the street when you saw them without their parent?
Fode says his mum signed him up with Eddie Ward, and that Eddie Ward began talking to him about moves to other clubs.
What did they say?
Just like how many teams wanted me to go to them, and why I should go. That's when like my head started getting into my head a bit.
Birmingham was in the Championship. Now Fode was being introduced to Premier League clubs.
Went to Man City for the first meeting was. Went to like Chelsea for the day, went to West Ham for the week, went to Liverpool. That's like, out of all the clubs that I went and looked at, probably the best one, the one that I felt understood me the most.
But the club Eddie Ward pushed him towards was Fulham. also in the Premier League at the time. And I've discovered the proposed move was about more than just Fode's career. I've obtained a series of confidential emails from spring 2013. It's a back and forth conversation between Fulham's academy director Hugh Jennings, Eddie Ward and another agent he was working with. They're discussing the terms of a transfer from Birmingham City to Fulham for Fode Nebe, who's just 14 years old at the time. The negotiations conclude with an offer from Fulham's academy director to pay the agents their full fee, which is £120,000 if the deal goes through. Under FA rules, Fode was too young to even have an agent, but that didn't seem to bother Fulham's academy.
The agency fees ended up being way more than, like, my contract. I was happy with what I got, because I didn't move there for money and that, but when I got to look at it, and I was like, wait, that's not right.
When Fode found out there were agency fees involved, he says he told Fulham he'd only sign if they weren't paid. Fulham FC didn't respond to our detailed questions, but said the club had neither paid nor agreed to pay Eddie Ward or the other agent in relation to Fode's registration with the club. Fode completed his move to the Fulham Academy when he was 14. Did you feel manipulated?
I was young, I didn't know much about football. My mum didn't know anything about football. So I thought that was just normal.
Did it affect your mental health?
I was in my room 24/7, didn't want to leave, didn't want to do anything. That was really not in a good place.
Why did you change? Fode was released by Fulham in March 2018. He blames Eddie Ward for pushing him into a move he was never happy with.
I didn't want to go there in the first place, but I didn't feel that I ever really settled in. I'd be on the phone to my friend on the way to training, crying, saying how much I didn't want to go. It was very painful.
I have to do it all over again. Fode is currently without a club and training with a non-league team. Eddie Ward's career as a football agent has gone from strength to strength. But the evidence is mounting that his agency Colossal targets underage players. I've spoken to the parents of 7 under-16 footballers who all told me that Colossal had made approaches offering their services. I've also been leaked this email detailing the minutes of a Colossal meeting that took place at this South London restaurant in 2017. The email includes a list of players the agency wanted to sign, 6 of whom were 14 or younger at the time, and Eddie Ward is CC'd in. I've also been shown WhatsApp messages from 2019 which show the agency still had underage players on its books. And last year, a complaint was lodged with the FA alleging Eddie Ward had paid £15,000 to the mum of an underage player. The FA are still investigating the case, but I've a source who says he's got the inside track and is willing to meet. That was extraordinary. We knew that Eddie Ward was being investigated for allegedly approaching an underage player, but we didn't know the detail. And I've just seen text messages from representatives of Colossal to the family, and then the alleged bank transfer of money from Colossal to the family of a player who was underage. I've been given evidence which I've agreed not to show on screen. Testimony to the FA from a former Colossal employee about how Eddie Ward signed an underage player. First, he took the boy and his mum to this Italian restaurant in London. Here he made a video call to his most famous client, Raheem Sterling, a minority shareholder in the agency. Eddie Ward passed the phone to the boy, a move guaranteed to impress any 15-year-old. Later there were gifts from Eddie Ward, first football boots, then cash to the boy's family. a total of £15,000. Before the final payment was made, the boy's mother signed an agreement, even though the player was underage. Raheem Sterling dropped Eddie Ward as his agent last year. His lawyers told Panorama that as an England international, he feels a responsibility to speak to aspiring players and has done so a couple of times at Mr. Ward's request. However, he doesn't speak to them about agents or financial issues, and he supports FA rules designed to protect young players. We wrote to Eddie Ward with a detailed list of questions. He says he can't comment on matters being investigated by the FA out of respect for that process, and says he was never Fode Nabe's agent. He didn't respond to the other points I put to him, so I've come to his house to try and get some answers.
Right, I'm just going to dial his intercom, see if he picks up.
The person who answers says I've got the wrong house, which is odd because we know he lives here. But today, there's no sign of him.
We put a series of allegations to him about approaching and signing underage players and using them to make money. And he just didn't think to respond.
The Football Association says it thoroughly investigates all allegations of rule breaking by agents, and that around 50 have been sanctioned over the last 3 years. But with so much money at stake, many agents still seem willing to take the risk.
We do see some players being led by the agent, and the agent themselves exploit that relationship of trust. They will look to develop the player's career in a manner which is the most financially beneficial for the agent, and not necessarily in terms of the player's long-term football development.
It's moving kids around at the whim of adults for the purposes of adults' benefits. To places where they don't necessarily want to go, need to go, or are the best places for them. They're commodities of a club. They're a commodity of the agent.
Aspiring young players are being caught up in a system driven by money and national success. If England win the next World Cup, it'll vindicate a system that also breaks many football dreams.
Tonight at 10:35 on BBC One, a harrowing personal story documentary, Nowhere to Run, abused by our coach. Over on BBC Two now, the story of the Premier League continues in the acclaimed new series Fever Pitch.